Hello, I'm Dr. Maria Kempinska, and I'm delighted to be interviewing one of my favorite comedians, Daliso Chaponda, who is a Zambian-born Malawian stand-up living in England. In 2017, he became a finalist in the variety show Britain's Got Talent, finishing third overall, which is amazing. And 2018, he launched a BBC Radio 4 series, Daliso Chaponda, Citizen of Nowhere. I won't give any more introduction and allow him, because he's much funnier than me, to do the rest. So thank you, Daliso, so much for joining me in this interview.
Hello, thank you for having me. Thank you, thank you. It's also funny because you were there in the beginning of my comedy arc, because my first time being a professional stand-up comedian was when I was doing the clubs you were running. So you saw me at the beginning, not at the beginning, I'd been a comedian for some years, but for me, quitting my day job and being like, this is comedy now.
Yeah, you're
was
professional.
It.
You
Exactly.
know, Jimmy Carr did the same. I saw him and he was suited and booted.
Yes.
And when he got paid for his first job in the comedy, I paid him for his first full comedy set. He said, that's it, I'm a professional now. And, you know, to be honest, I have seen loads of comedy. And of course, as I say, you're one of my favorites, and you sparkled, if that's the right word, right at the beginning. And you actually did so well, super well, very quickly, didn't you?
I did in the UK. So essentially, I started comedy in Canada. And that's where I did my fumbling on stage, figuring things out. And then I had to leave Canada for immigration reasons. I was there as a student. And then when I moved to the UK, I was what you would call a decent opener, in that I knew how to be funny. I wasn't yet at my best stage, but I'd already done the stumbling and not knowing what a joke is. And
you know, that's so interesting, because in the world of comedy, people struggle with it, and it's quite understandable that outsiders, promoters, you know, anybody who doesn't understand this sort of format and formula of comedy and the structure don't understand how tricky it is, because you do stumble on stage. You do have to find yourself. You do have to find out what works for you as a comedian. What is your joke? How do you make something funny? So what is your mindset? At what point did it twig in your mind? That's how I do it.
I think the big switch for me was early on. I used to try to figure out what is funny. So I'd sit down and I'd think, oh, what did I see that was funny today? Who did I hear that was funny today? And it was the search for funny. And then around 6 years in, I literally was like, no, I'm going to decide what I want to talk about, and then I'm going to make it funny. Yeah. And that was the big step forward, because I was like, oh, anything can be funny. So I'm talking about what I really want to talk about and adding jokes.
Yeah, I remember talking to, you must know Sean Mayo.
Oh, yes.
And this was years and years ago. And we were talking about something. We were in the bar after a show. And I explained a story to him. And he said, no, this is how you set it up, Maria. He edited it, reformulated it, yes, in his way, and made it super funny in that moment. And every comedian has to do that, don't they?
Yes, after a while you become like a scientist, in that you can just play with the order of words and mess with premises, and you can make anything funny. And what helped a lot for me was writing for other comedians. In that early on I had some promise, and so some more famous comedians got me to write a few jokes for them. And then you're trying to think like someone else, or try to write something that's funny for everyone. And that gives you a lot more subject matter. At first, I was always talking about being a foreigner. I was talking about dating, but suddenly I had to come up with a joke about having 2 kids. Suddenly I had to come up with a joke about being an Indian, things which were totally negative, separate from me. Yeah. And so it was one of those things.
They were foreign to you, but
they were foreign to you, but it made you it makes you think about jokes in a better way.
Yeah. And that mindset. So can you mention anybody you wrote for?
I can't really. Yeah, it's very interesting. If I was in America, I could have mentioned it, because in America, people are very open about, we've got writers and so on. But here, if you look at like any BBC program, they'll often say advising producer or something like that. Rather, just writer, just say writer. But for some reason it's frowned upon here, even
I
though
do remember, so it's in Battersea, when I had the club in Battersea, standing in the coffee bar, and Bill Bailey was in there with Bob Mills talking.
Yeah.
And Bill said, look, I've got this opening line. And he gave the opening line, and he said, but I can't find the punchline. And Bob gave him a punchline, and Bill said, oh, can I have that? And Bob said, yeah. And he said, okay, here's 25 quid.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think it's something. So I have a comedian, Scott Bennett, who I hire to, when I do television and I need to write extra jokes, I'll happily and honestly hire him. He worked with me on my radio show, but I've noticed most British acts, it's a secret.
It is a secret. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. But well done. And do you remember one of your first jokes that you told on stage that people laughed at, and you say, that's it, I've got it?
Yes, 100%. I remember sort of like one of my first big jokes, which I did, was the Bible says, thou shalt not steal, but nowhere does it say thou shalt not swap. And then, so I took a stereo, I left a Walkman. And that was one of my, I don't do one-liners, but it was one of my really short, self-contained jokes, which always worked. I'm one of these people who has like spreadsheets, and I write in my jokes. And if it always gets a laugh, it gets an A. If it always gets an applause break, it gets an A+. If it's situational, it gets a B. And that was one of my first A+. Always.
Yeah, I do remember that joke. It was perfect. And it was a winner every single time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it feels so good when you hit that, because the beginning of comedy is a lot of, I had a good gig, then I had a bad gig. And then one day you figure out, I've stopped having bad gigs. That's when you're actually good. And
were you sort of working on your own? Did you have support? Did you have an agent, a manager?
Well, so when I moved to the UK, I got an agent. I literally moved over to the UK visiting my brother, and I could visit my brother for a month under the immigration rules. And I was like, I have to find an agent in 1 month. And so I did hundreds of open mics, and luckily one of the agents took me on. Super.
And what was it? Do you do work in Malawi, before we get back into the detail of your work, but do you do work out there?
I do now. So there was no comedy there.
Yeah.
I mean, there were like some funny plays, but there wasn't stand-up. And so I think it was 2017, I did the first Malawian big show. Oh, no, it was probably earlier than that, probably maybe 2014.
Wow.
And then I've been going back every year or two and doing massive shows there.
But
it's not in any purpose-built venue. We do it in like a conference center or hotel or something like that. But
they must love you.
Oh, they love me. They already loved me. And then I did Britain's Got Talent, and then it got insane.
Did it? What was that like? What was the switch like? For
Malawi, I arrived in the airport and people had Daliso t-shirts on, and every human being knows me. And it's weird though, because it's not fame like fame is in the UK. There's no one screaming. It's just, it's you. And literally everybody knows me like I'm a member of their family. So everyone's like, hello Chaponda, hello Chaponda. And like, it's so interesting because they don't have a culture of people coming and asking for selfies, but they'll sit down and just tell you about their life.
So you become their therapist.
Exactly. Oh, it's wonderful. It's I was there a month ago for the first time since the pandemic.
Wow.
And it just felt so good being back. And also there's sunlight and it's beautiful and it's got problems, but it's just a lovely place to be.
And your family's out there, are they still?
Yes, my parents are there. My dad's a politician, and my mom's my mom's a doctor. And so the two of them are there, retired, and then weren't able to stay retired. So are more busy than I've ever seen.
So how did they like your comedy?
I will say that at first there was a lot of resistance because they thought I was throwing my life away. But what's wonderful is now that I'm doing well, they inflict it upon people. So like my dad has an iPad, which he carries around, which has my videos on it. My mom has all my newspaper clippings and things like that. And one of the sweetest things was I told she wanted to come to a show. And I told my brother, she can't. It was a show at a club called the Frog and Bucket, which is very drunk, filthy. Yeah. I was like, I don't think she'll like it. And he said, she watches your show every day.
Oh, that's how she keeps connected.
So I was like, okay, she can come see me swear. It doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah, because there are some saucy bits. Let's call them saucy. They are saucy, actually. It's funny because I've seen all, as you know, spectrums of comedy.
Yes.
from the sweetest to the crudest, but we're talking about the saucy. But how did you cope? Because some comedians don't cope with parents who are against their chosen career, but you coped. How did you cope with that?
So it was very frustrating at the beginning when I was starting out, but also, you see, I was very academic, and it was me leaving behind what they saw was a lot of promise. So there was a lot of arguing, a lot of, but what was lovely is my parents may not have been supportive, but my brothers were very supportive. In fact, I was only able to become a comedian in the UK because of my brother, because for those early 2 years where you're not making much money, I was able to live in his spare room.
Right. Well, tell me about your brothers. What do they do? And what were you
my
studying?
oldest brother, the one I lived with, he was a doctor. He was working in Liverpool, infectious diseases specialist. So it became very important in the last 2 years. And so he's very supportive. And then my other brother is an economist, very supportive. And my other brother's a programmer. So they were very much, they went on the path, the straight and narrow path, but they believed in my stuff and were very supportive. And then now it's great because now all of them fly when I'm doing a big show, and it's just great.
And it's fun. What were you studying?
So I was studying computer programming as well. And then I switched to English literature, which I thought would help me with comedy. It doesn't really, but it was still closer.
Who did you study then? Which books?
Oh, I did, Gabriela, I did like world literature. So I did Gabriela Garcia Marquez.
Yes.
I did, Tolstoy. You did all the sort of world literature.
Wonderful.
And it
classics.
was wonderful to do. But my silly belief that it would be better for comedy. Comedy is one of those things you have to just do it. It's almost like you learn by doing it. It's an apprenticeship kind of thing.
And that's why it's so hard with musicians. They can write a song in their room. They can play on a guitar or drums or something like that. They go into a studio. It's all done. They go out on stage and they rehearse, and that's it. Your performance is there. Same with acting. Comedy, acting, your script writing, your performance, your rehearsal is all live in front of the audience. You are raw.
Yes, 100%. And you can write the best joke back at home, and then you try it in front of people like, oh, I guess it's not funny.
I know, it's just not funny.
Yes.
Is there a different sense of humor in Malawi than here?
I will say that there are some things that are universal. So like observational jokes about family, about love, there's universal. But then each country has some things which they enjoy more. Like sarcasm and sort of like dark, almost mean irony is a very British thing, which wouldn't work.
Can you give us an example of the type that works?
So I just mean like people here take the piss out of each other, and you can insult your mate.
Yeah.
And that's totally a normal thing to do here. While in Malawi, people be like, I'm your friend. Why are you insulting me? It's not, it's a very British odd thing. And you can even see it in the comedy. Is that if you watch something like Extras or something like that, the relationship that the Ricky Gervais character has with his best friend is they're always insulting each other, which would be puzzling to a Malawian viewer, right?
But also, women don't do that so much, do they? Women tend not to be so insulting.
So insulting as well. So that's
it's a
very
male
different.
thing. I quite like that in a way. I've had to learn, well, obviously I've watched it on the stage, but I do watch that amongst men, and real men who love each other just do insult each other.
So much insults.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, the thing which people here don't understand it much is places, Malawi, South Africa, Zimbabwe, there's a lot of joking about horrible things, right? So people joke about AIDS, people joke about how bad the government is, people joke in that stuff which is horrible and you can't change. It's very much that sort of gallows humor. And here it's sort of, there are a few people like the Jimmy Carrs and Frankie Boyles who offend, but it's not so much just joking about the bad in your daily life. I think here people, you go to comedy to forget about the pain in your daily life. There it's just talk about it.
And especially at the moment, everybody wants to be drawn out of that side. And do you have to, but Okay, I did mention this to you before, but I wrote about you in my PhD because I wrote about the mind of a comedian. I know, and I'm really pleased to be able to say that I did that. And I wrote because in my thoughts about stand-up comedians, I also said that some comedians are joke tellers. So Freud wrote about the joke. I wrote about the comedian. And I said there are certain types of comedians. And once you make it, so I had to do the whole thing about my understanding of the theory of psychology, Jung and Freud, blah, blah, blah. And you go through all that. And it's quite in depth. And then I said, so who are the comedians and how do you look at them? There are some comedians who are great performers. Some are good, some are great. And then you've got somebody who is what I call the supra comedian, but also the supra joke that comes from. And that is the one that can transform society.
Wow.
Okay. And a joke in itself can be transformative. I think that's what you're talking about. That's the type of comedian you want to be.
Yes, 100%.
In my opinion. So, and you, one of yours was, I'm from Malawi. I've been living in the UK for 7 years and I still don't fit in.
Yes. Yes. Very much true.
Do you want to tell that joke? Have I
Yes, I still don't fit in. What is this, the one I don't drink alcohol?
No, it's about the jobs they hate. They hate the jobs. They hate the weather.
Sorry, I've done so many jokes.
I'm sure. Okay, can I tell it?
Yes, you can tell it.
And then can you tell it?
Yes.
I'll give you the hint. You then tell it because you do it in your way, which is better.
Yes.
I've been living in the UK for 7 years and I still don't fit in. England legitimately is a nation of complainers.
Yes.
Everybody hates their jobs. They hate the weather. Their biggest complaint is financial crisis.
Oh, okay. I've got you.
Okay, can you tell the joke?
Now, this is my joke. Yes. So when I first got here to the UK, I heard people complaining about the financial crisis, financial crisis. I'm from Africa. What are you on about? If this is a financial crisis, where's Bono? Okay, where's UNICEF? It'll be a financial crisis when their planes flying over Birmingham, tossing fish and chips out the window. And when you're seeing ads on television saying this chav has to walk 5 miles a day to get a bottle of WKD Blue. That's the joke. That one actually stopped doing because everybody knows it. But that is was one of my favorite jokes.
Totally, because it is so powerful.
And what also is interesting is, the last 2 years when things got really bad and UNICEF did start having to give British children food packages and stuff, people started sending me my joke saying, oh, well, look, it's happening now. And I was like, it wasn't a challenge. How could I see the pandemic coming?
Yeah, but don't you think, I really think that those powerful comedians almost resonate with things in the world. You pick things up.
Well, the thing which changed my comedy, what I wanted to do with comedy, is I watched a movie called Life is Beautiful, right? Yeah. Which is a beautiful Italian movie by Roberto Benigni. And it's set in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's uplifting. And that made me think you can talk about anything with comedy, and comedy can be more than just, oh, I laughed for half an hour. And so, that's sort of my 20-year plan that, by the time I'm 60, I want to have started to hit that kind of transcendental comedy where people laugh, but it also really hits them inside.
So I actually wrote about Chris Rock being one of those super comedians.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
He's my favorite living
I was
comedian.
going to ask you. Oh,
100% favorite living comedian.
Amazing.
I mean, living and dead, my favorite is Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
But of those living comedians, it's 100% Chris Rock.
Absolutely. And so given the opportunity, I think he might still be reeling before he does the next Oscars. Given the opportunity, would you host the Oscars?
Oh, I would 100%. I would 100%. Oh, but like I was almost arrested for a joke. I'm like, look, we tell the jokes and then what happens. I also think comedy is like a conversation. So we can't necessarily control the response. You just say your intent and hopefully people hear what you want. But sometimes they get angry.
As we've seen.
Yes. And also, he was the most public one, but I'm sure you remember Jim Jeffries got punched for a joke.
I've seen a lot of, not that many, but enough comedians get involved in that side of the story.
Yes. I remember Eddie Brimson.
Yeah.
at Jongleurs Birmingham got followed into the green room by someone angry at his joke, and it was insane. But again, it's like the comedy is all about stepping over the line.
Yes.
And I love what it does, but sometimes people will get upset you stepped over the line.
And I find that a little bit disheartening when people are trying to break down the culture and say, stop this, stop comedy, stop saying what you need to say. Because
I do think it's an ongoing conversation. Also, it's happened all my life. It's not, people act like it's new, but I remember people protesting Madonna, Marilyn Manson, Eminem. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you go back, there was people arresting, I forget, Lenny Bruce. And so there's always going to be some pullback back and forth, but it's different. Now it's not from Christian fundamentalists. Now it's from hyper woke people. So it's a pushback, but from a different place entirely.
And I think that, in my years, as I was always being called up, why are you allowing this comedian to say this or that, or about 9/11, just after 9/11 happened? And I said, well, they're Americans, And I must say that if I ever said to a comedian, look, be sensitive about this, they always listened and they reined in their comedy. So I do think promoters have to play a part in the whole defending of the nature of comedy. And people who
I also think when people explain it to you, so like when I did Zimbabwe, the venue came to me and they said, look, if you cross the line, you won't get in trouble because you're a foreigner, but we might lose our funding, we'll get in trouble, so please could you hold back? And then I was like, okay, I know the reason. I 100% won't be try to be crossing lines. So I think it's like when people are reasonable with you, you will listen. But I will say, I don't know if I'm talking out of school. No, I think I can tell you this one. So it's very funny. When I was doing a tour with Tom Stade, who is absolutely brilliant.
He is Canadian.
But he will cross all the lines.
Yes,
so
Tom does.
But then the promoter, if she wanted him to reel back, she wouldn't talk to him. She'd talk to his wife.
Oh, yes.
So there are tricks to get comedians to reel things back.
Yeah, Tom is amazing.
Yeah,
Tom Stade, and his wife is super lovely, and they're often on the circuit together. So that's brilliant. Before we get carried away with anything else, just mention your site so that people can.
Oh, yes, my site is africancomedian.com, and I am on an ongoing tour, which was rescheduled because of COVID, but now it's actually happening.
And I tend to think your tours will be ad infinitum, apart from your comedy, the normal comedy venues. But have there been not so many? Have there been sometimes that aren't so funny?
No, it's been great, actually, in that I think I love touring. To stand up on stage and do a 1 hour show, that's like what I want to be doing. And you're right, I'll be doing it till I'm 85. And no, I'm always convinced it's going to be funny, the audience is going to enjoy it, but like you worry about things like attendance, you worry about all the business stuff which is around the comedy so that you can do the lovely part, which is the comedy. But as you know, the industry part is sometimes mind-numbing.
Oh, totally. It's crazy. And how often do you rewrite your work, your material?
So I would say I write probably a new 20 minutes every maybe 6 months. But I actually, now that I think about it, since I do a new show every year, it's probably an hour a year, but that's of the stuff which makes the cut. So for the hour which makes the cut, you probably write 3 hours of stuff which you try at open mics. You say, not that, not that. But I'm constantly writing, constantly testing stuff because I aim to do a new touring show every year. So.
And is there a joke of yours that you think this is my favorite ever one that I've written?
Yes, I have a joke. And actually it's interesting because you did psychology. So it's about therapy. It was very tough to write. Now you may have to edit some of this out. I don't know what time this goes out, but essentially I dated a psychologist, and you can never date a psychologist if you want to win an argument, because you cheat in arguments. I would say, make a good point. You'd say, that's not you talking, that's your fear talking, right? But the other thing is, if you date a psychologist, never let them find out any traumatic events which happened in your childhood. They start bringing it up. Like, this is a sad fact. When I was younger, I was molested. Unfortunately, it's happened to a lot of people. She started bringing it up. She was like, Daliso, I think you're afraid of commitment. I think the reason you're afraid of commitment is because you were molested. I was like, do you have to bring this up at a Christmas dinner party in front of all of my friends and my uncle? But also I saw her getting frisky with someone else. I said, that's not acceptable. She said, oh, you don't trust me. You don't trust anybody. You're so jealous. But, you know, I read in my psychology textbook that people who've been through trauma, you can hallucinate. So maybe you didn't see what you saw. And I was like, really? Well, I read in your psychology textbook that people like me can flip and kill people. And she said, are you threatening me? I said, no, that's your fear talking. That's like the sort of...
That is almost the perfect joke for a therapist. You're so right. But also, there is not enough of that playfulness with the mind.
With the mind, exactly.
The things that you're saying to have made something out of therapy, because I don't do, oh, that's your fear talking, because I think that's sort of a bit trite. But you do have people now, they're so into that.
Yes, and actually, to be more accurate, she was studying. She was a psychology student.
No, but it's
probably
still...
meant she was more blunt with it.
There's so many people doing that. Oh, you've got abandonment issues.
Yes,
oh, you've got...
yes. And then also I think I wrote it out of the thing underneath it is I don't like the idea of being defined by one thing, even if it was a terrible thing.
Totally.
In that, like, some people they think, oh, I figured you out now because you know one fact.
Yes.
But we are, even if that contributed a lot, we are combined tapestry of millions of influences.
Totally, because every time something happens to you, it has a repercussion and it reverberates. It's like that ripple effect, and you don't know which part of you it's going to affect. So yes, absolutely right.
But that's my favorite joke because
I love it.
I wanted to talk about it for a long time, and I tried around 6 or 7 angles, and then one day I got it, because the mistake I had at the beginning is I'd do a joke and you'd feel people almost going and feeling sorry for you. And then I was like, oh, I don't want that. I want them to laugh. And then by putting it in a couple argument, it allowed them to laugh.
Yeah, perfect. So, it's a brilliant joke. And also, just to finish up with, you have written a book.
I have, because there was no comedy. I mean, there were a few Zoom shows, there were some drive-ins, but there was no real comedy in the pandemic. And I was frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And I went back to... I used to write fiction before I discovered comedy. So I wrote a book for, it was written as a young adult novel. And then now the agent has made me push it down to 12 and 13-year-olds. And it's like it's like a fantasy sort of Harry Potter-esque kind of thing, but with more laughs. It's like a comedy fantasy. Nice. So...
That is absolutely brilliant. And the title of your book is?
It's The Page Divers, because it's about a little girl who discovers she can pull things out of books. Like if she's reading about a banana, she can reach into the page and pull out the banana.
Oh, that sounds super visual.
And it is very visual, very fun, very young. I understand why they asked me to push down the age. But it was so... It also gave me an escape, because lockdown was bleak. And just so bleak, particularly because I live alone and I'll just go for a walk, and having a place to escape was so essential.
And the mind is so fantastic, coming back to the therapeutic nature of life, and also the mind. And when you do, and you as a comedian, every comedian has to delve into their mind and pull things out and transform them and make them into something funny. But it's a great gift for the world to be able to do that, isn't it?
I think so, very much, because my favorite thing is watching people laugh. And they do things like the couple will laugh and look at each other when they're both enjoying it. And I just like the reactions. I love the reactions. And even like one of the best things I saw that happened to me is I was walking past a pub, and a young kid not a kid now, he's maybe 18, but he ran out looking very young, and he was like, oh, you made my childhood. And that was so amazing, because he used to watch, he must have been 14 or 15 when I did BGT, and he used to watch the videos again and again and again. And I just love that you can make an impact on people you don't even know.
And now you're doing it with books and your tour. Amazing. So Daliso Chaponda, thank you. This is Great British Radio. Thank you so much for allowing me to interview you.
Oh, such a pleasure. And also thank you so much for making me a professional way back, because that kept me going.
Can you just say a comedy professional?
And thank you that's a good point. And thank you so much for making me a comedy professional back when I first got to the UK.
Hello, I'm Dr. Maria Kempinska, and I'm joined by my fabulous guest, Daliso Chaponda, who is a Malawian stand-up comedian who performs now in the UK and is just a totally sensational performer. And I'm going to ask him to do some quick fire questions. So Daliso, welcome.
Thank you.
And here we go. McDonald's or KFC?
KFC.
Me too.
Yes. It's chicken. It's less guilt. There's some guilt, but there's less guilt.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Most famous person in your contact list?
Sarah Millican.
Favorite place in the UK and why?
Birmingham, because the shows there are wonderful, multicultural. They just love, for some reason, I work best in Birmingham.
Fantastic. Favorite song and why?
Tracy Chapman, Sub-City, in that it's like a story, it's poetic. She's just wonderful.
She is. Favorite place in the world and why?
It would actually be Lilongwe in Malawi, my home country, where my family is, where I began.
where you were created. Any siblings?
Yes, I have 3 overachieving siblings.
And now you are over the overachieving siblings. Do you say scone or scone?
I say scone.
Jam or cream first?
I put the jam first.
Anyone living or past that you would love to meet?
I would love to meet Joan Rivers, my favorite comedian.
Yeah, amazing. Red or white wine?
Neither. I do not drink any wine. But if I was going to pour someone, I would use red.
Family hero and why?
My father, who has had an astonishing life, went from a village to working for the UN to being a politician, endured things like being in an office that blew up and all sorts of things, and just always keeps lasting. Wrote a book at 80. He's
Wow.
He's
alive.
Very inspiring.
He's alive and
Yes.
creative. And I
Yes.
love that. What did you want to do when you were growing up?
I wanted to be a preacher. That's the very first thing I wanted to be. And I actually think comedy is not that far from the initial dream.
Sam Kinison came from preaching background.
I think
like,
there's a
number of comedians do.
It's the wanting to say something that is important and for people to listen and to change them. So there's a lot of similar.
Yeah, I'm so happy you did it in comedy. Well done. What were your exam results when you left school?
They were extremely good. I was overachieving academic, which is why so many people I went to school with don't understand how I became a comedian. They're like, you were going to be a lecturer or something.
Yeah, but they say comedians have the highest IQ. Just put that out there. How many of your school friends do you still see, if any?
I see probably around 3 of them.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Who do you miss mostly and why?
I have a really close friend who lives in Bournemouth, and whenever I'm near, I see them, but I'm not often down there. So I think I miss her most often.
Ah, nice. Ant or Deck?
This is going to get me in trouble because I do see them. So I'm going to say Ant. I'm going to say Ant, but Deck, I'm sorry.
Trouble. Summer or winter?
Oh, summer.
Yeah.
Does anyone actually say winter?
Not yet. Fish and chips or curry?
Curry.
Yeah, Birmingham. Hero, heroine, and why? Who would you choose?
Okay, so I would say my hero would be Orson Scott Card. So he's a fiction writer who wrote thousands of books, which I loved. Because my first art that I lit up to was books. And so I've been reading him since I was 8.
Wow.
And I read the last book by him this year. So
fantastic.
I would say yes.
Dog or cat?
Neither. I'm not a pet
Yep.
person at all. I'll have a human. I'll have a human.
Yes, you'll have a human. You tell any future ladies in your life, no dogs or cats. Okay, sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Steak or lobster?
Oh, steak, 100%.
I'm coming to your place for dinner.
Yes.
Rolling Stones or the Beatles?
Beatles.
Yeah.
I think I'm more the touching melodies.
Yeah, so true. Okay, London, north or south, east or west?
I don't know London very well, so I'm going to say central, because if I'm going to London, it's to do something at the BBC, which is in the center.
In the center.
That's where I want to be.
Overground or underground?
Overground. The idea of being underground bothers me.
Does it? Okay. Well,
yeah, I'm always like, if something goes wrong, there's a little bit of claustrophobia.
We're going to look at that as a doctor. I will look at that with you, Daliso. Okay, thank you so much, Daliso Chaponda, for completing the quickfire questions. I am Dr. Maria Kempinska, and this is Great British Radio. Hello, I'm Dr. Maria Kempinska, and I'm joined by my fantastic guest, Daliso Chaponda, who is the most amazing British stand-up, but born in Malawi. And we are so, I mean, I cannot tell you how pleased I am that he is joining us today. So one of the things that we're going to ask Daliso to do is a quick fire questions, but this is with a difference. So bear with me, Daliso, as I want you to let your imagination run wild, but say the first thing that comes into your head. Welcome,
Okay.
Daliso.
Okay.
Can you give me a fictitious name, male or female?
Zuba.
Oh, we like Zuba. Good name. I need the first name, which you've given me, and a surname.
Chalan.
Chalan, you're going to have to remember these.
Chalan. Okay, yes.
That's good. How old is Zuba Chalan?
He's 27.
And where does he live?
He lives in Rwanda.
In Rwanda. Has there been a big news story in the town that has directly affected him?
Yes, he's learned that there's a nearby mountain where they believe they are blood-sucking giants.
Wow. And what is his occupation?
He is he disproves superstitions.
I love that. Does he have a family, wife, children?
He has one child, but he's a widower.
Oh. Who's his enemy?
His enemy is the local sort of spirit speaker, witch doctor, who he's always proving to be a faker.
Oh, wow. And what is he scared of?
He is afraid of being a bad father.
And what is his hobbies?
His hobbies are, he loves telling stories, and he loves drinking home-brewed beer.
And are there any tragedies in the family?
Other than the death of his wife, there's also the fact that he lost 2 fingers in an accident.
Wow. Has he been on holiday recently? And if so, where to?
Yes, he took his son on a journey to the nearby neighboring Burundi, and they just walked around nature and had a lovely holiday.
Had a lovely holiday. How super. I think I've already asked about the enemy. You've said, who is his enemy? Why does he have an enemy?
He has an enemy because when his wife died, everyone blamed it on superstition. And so now he disproves superstition, and the people who make their living off making people believe in nonsense hate him.
And does he have a dark secret?
He has a dark secret in that sometimes he doesn't miss his wife.
And do they have a dark secret? His enemies? What is their dark secret?
His enemies,
no,
yes.
as well as his.
Okay, so his enemies' dark secret is that they were involved in killing his wife.
Oh, wow. And does he have any regrets?
He regrets that he didn't want his son. And when for the first years of his life, he hated having a son. And then now his son is the most important thing in his life.
Oh, wow. Oh, it's heartbreaking. Now, Daliso Chaponda, you have just outlined your prize-winning novel, which I think it will be. As you know, we all have a book inside us, although you've already written one. And now this is your new subconscious book. Now, before we finish this, can you tell me the title of your second best-selling book? Because you've already written one.
It's called Mountain Gods.
Mountain Gods. Well, I think you can write this, aren't you? Now?
I think I can write this. Yes.
It's fantastic. So, Daliso Chaponda, thank you so much for your book called The Mountain Gods. And I'm Dr. Maria Kempinska, and this is the Great British Radio.
Hi, this is Daliso Chaponda, and you can hear me soon on Great British Radio. Second one. Hi, this is Daliso Chaponda, and you're listening to Great British Radio. Is there a third one? No, I only see two.
Soon.
Oh, well, where's the soon one?
Just say Daliso Chaponda, and this is Great British Radio. I'll speak to you soon or something.
Okay. Hello, this is Daliso Chaponda on Great British Radio. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Daliso Chaponda, and I'll be back with you in one moment. We'll have more from my guest, Daliso Chaponda, on Great British Radio after this. More to come from Daliso Chaponda on Great British Radio after this moment. Thank you so much, Daliso Chaponda. You're a brilliant comedian. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Dr. Maria Kempinska, and this is the Great British Radio. Join me, Dr. Maria Kempinska, talking to Daliso Chaponda today on Great British Radio. Join me, Dr. Maria Kempinska, talking to Daliso Chaponda tomorrow on Great British Radio. Join me, Dr. Maria Kempinska, talking to Daliso Chaponda soon on Great British Radio.